All right, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. As promised some time ago, I want to appreciate Mr. Miners here for being a community member who pushed for this, and we turned it from a single person conversation into a community conversation, so that's why we're here tonight. And our guy over at the tower, Trent, which I'll let you introduce yourself here in just a second, but Trent is a contractor over at the tower. He can explain all of that and how that works. But he's here tonight to help us talk about air traffic control and what that looks like for New Haven. There will be probably some questions that don't make sense for air traffic control to answer. They may be pilot questions or FAA questions. But he'll give us a short presentation, and then we'll get into Q&A, and he'll be able to go with us till about 7:30, and then after that, we have some additional content for you all, but we just want to get through the Q&A for that. So yeah, with that, Trent, why don't you go ahead and get started?
How you doing? My name is Roger Gilliam. I go by Trent. Trent's my middle name, so I go by Trent. I'm the new air traffic manager at New Haven. I've been here since April.
Can you speak a little closer to the mic, please?
Okay, I'm sorry. I've been here since April. This is my first manager job in the contract world. I'm ex-military. Did 23 years in the Navy. Did 23 years in the Navy. 3 years in the Marine Corps. Wasn't air traffic control. It was Marine infantry. I decided I didn't want that. Run around hunting things in the woods for the rest of my life. Born and raised in Louisiana. Like I said, toured the USMC for 3 years in that Marine Division on Camp Pendleton. Enlisted in the Navy and did 23 years. Since leaving Louisiana in 1984, I've done multiple spots on the East Coast, Jacksonville, Florida, Pass River, Maryland, New Jersey. Been doing ATC on and off since 1988. So that's what, 34 years. The longest time I took off was about 4 or 5 years. And now before I came to this company, I decided to get back into it. I had gone to Virginia. That's where my kids and my ex are, to help raise them. So once they grew up a little bit, I came back into the company. ATC priorities. We'll get right into it because I'll be here till 5:45. So no. ATC priorities are separating aircraft and issuing safety alerts. That's our main priority. A lot of guys come in and want different things, but for us, it's separating aircraft and issuing safety alerts, low altitude alerts, terrain alerts. That's our main priority. The National Airspace System defined. You got Class A, it's flight level 180 to 600. Class B, up to 10,000. Class C, service to 4. Class D, which is our tower, service to 2,500, 5 nautical mile in width. That's what most towers are. They might have some variation of that, like Hartford Brainerd, where I was last time. We had a mile extension for I-4 going into the Class Charlie airspace into Bradley. So you might have some variation of it, but most of them will come down to 5 miles, 2,500 feet. This is what I went over. Class A is 180 to flight level 600. Class B is service to 10,000. Class C is service to 4,000. Class D service to 25. Class E, if not Class A, B, C, D, it is D. And Class G is uncontrolled airspace. Class G airspace. Why it's significant here, or most contract tower, is at night when we shut down at 10 o'clock, it goes to Class G. That's where you click the lights 4 or 5 times. It comes up either high, low, or mid, and you announce where you are. 5 times, lights come on, hey, on a 10-mile final for runway 20, or I'm a 5-mile final for runway 20. You just announce where you are in the pattern or in as far as the sequence is concerned. The New Haven class Delta, like I said, service 2,500, 5 nautical miles. Most towers in the area have some variation of that. New Haven controller limitations. We can only control aircraft in our airspace. We are a VFR tower that departs and accepts I-4 aircraft into our airspace. Anything I-4 will be handled by N90, or New York approach. I-4 departures are called into N90 and asked for releases into the system. I-4 arrivals will be established on an approach instrument or visual, which means they have the site sighted or runway. Difference between I-4 and VFR aircraft. Now, this is something I made up. I-4 instrument flight rules. Aircraft have more priority than the VFR visual flight rules aircraft. I-4 aircraft is usually on the flight plan and receives a maximum amount of services from ATC. If you've been in, most of you guys fly, so if you've been airborne and had a bellows coming in, or had somebody else I-4 and tower kind of put you behind the I-4 aircraft, this is why, because they receive the maximum amount of services. VFR aircraft are usually just CNBC. They receive services from ATC, but usually flight following, whether they receive traffic calls or any other services ATC can give at that time. That basically means you're not priority. The I-4 aircraft is priority. We will give you what we can. And if it's a safety issue, we will definitely call the traffic. Any other thing that's safety-wise, we will give it to you. But an I-4 aircraft is priority. I-4 is like getting a first-class airline ticket, and VFR is like flying economy. That's basically what it is. I-4, you will see the luxurious service, drinks, towels, and your own bathroom. VFR, you see service, but you won't take priority. Safety issues will be handled. That's basically what it comes down to. And most people, I'm thinking, are VFR aircraft. So not to say we're not going to give you any services, but we're going to give you the maximum amount we can at the time. Stage of flight and the different air traffic controllers throughout the flight. Pre-flight, basically, I'll go with Velo or air carrier. You're gonna get your flight plan. Flight plan will come through the system. You're gonna get the flight plan from clearance delivery or ground control. It might be the same person. Once that clearance is given, you're gonna ask for taxi instructions from ground. Ground is gonna taxi the aircraft out to the runway. You're gonna switch the local once you're holding short. Once you're holding short, the takeoff will be given by your local controller. Your local controller will call N90, New York approach, and they say, hey, I got this guy, this CID number off of runway 2 or runway 20. They will give them whatever they want to give them, and you will repeat those instructions with exactly what they tell you. You will repeat that to the aircraft and get them on air. Takeoff, once they get airborne, we switch them to approach control, but normally it's above 2,500. They will talk to New York approach. New York approach will take them up to a certain altitude. They'll talk to en route. En route is usually higher altitude, 17, 18,000, whatever. They will talk to them for the duration, most of their flight. On the backside, it's pretty much the same way, just in reverse. They're up at altitude, say 35,000. They start descending. They will go to descent. They will go to an approach controller. The approach controller will take them down, get them down to about 3,000, 4,000 feet, and hand them off to the terminal. Terminal will take them to landing. IFR flight and controllers talking to already, I think I went through that, so you can skip that one. And delays. Most air traffic delays are the centers and work their way down. New York Center or N90 or New York approach. It can be due to weather, volume restrictions along the way, etc. TFRs, for example. Since I've been here, I've had the most part is the weather. A couple of weeks, about 3 months ago, I'm up there and it's really bad weather. And they stopped pretty much the whole East Coast from going up. Guys are upset, but it's nothing to do with us. We can't launch them, they're not letting them go up. They're not letting them hit the approach gate or the departure gates. And pretty much they're just sitting there waiting 2, 3, 4 hours. After hours, the CTAP. New Haven control towers are 06 to 2200. After hours, we transition to CTAP, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, and Class G airspace, which is on patrol. To activate lighting, pilots click on frequency 124.8, 3, 5, or 7 times. Your 3 is low intensity, your 5 is medium intensity, your 7 is high intensity. Whichever one you want. They control themselves by announcing their intentions and position at all times. So when you're out there 10 miles out, you say, I'm 10 miles out, making an approach to 20, making an approach to 2. When you're close, you're 3 miles, hey, I'm 3 miles, landing runway 20. At 1 mile, whatever, I'm landing 20. You're just letting everybody who happened to be on that frequency at that time know exactly what you're doing. Emergencies. The minimum amount of info for in-flight emergencies is aircraft ID and type aircraft, nature or type of emergency, the pilot's desires. When all the info is obtained, we pass on the ops so they can understand what they're handling or getting into. Once ops is notified, all movement on the airfield will cease. No taxiing, no reading clearances, nothing while that emergency is happening. When an emergency is happening, everything shuts down until the emergency is over. Everything shuts down. A lot of times we get pilots where we want to taxi. No, you're not taxiing. Everything shuts down. That's policy. And bird activity. Issue advisory info on pilot reporting, tower observed, radar observed, and pilot verified bird activity. Include position, species, or size of bird if known, course of flight, and altitude. Make all hands calls for 15 minutes after receipt of info. So basically that means when we get the bird info, we're gonna announce it every 20 seconds or so, every 30 seconds for 15 minutes. We also put it on the ATIS. For my ATIS, it's always on the ATIS. Because we have so much wildlife around here. It's standard for me. And that's pretty much it. Anybody got any questions or?
Frank, could you just explain to some of the folks what ATIS is, ATS?
Okay, ATIS is uninterrupted recording that's 24 or as long as the tower is open. It goes to the ASOS at night. But it's an uninterrupted recording where we put the runway, we put the type of approach everybody's doing, if it's IFR, good weather, visual approach, or instrument approach. We tell them the temperature, dew point, time. There's probably about 14, 15 things we put on the ATIS. And we cut it every hour. It comes out every hour. We gotta do a new one every hour. So we're letting everybody know what's going on with the weather and have all the information to make a landing at the airport.
And I'm sorry, and when they contact you, they have to verify that they have the current.
Exactly. They have to verify that they have the current ATIS. That's a secret for me. That's one of my yeah. Yeah. I had an incident at Harper Brainerd where a guy came in serious, matter of fact, and he said he had the ATIS. That's the only thing that covered me, honestly. He came in to runway 20, got a gust of wind upon landing, and if anybody ever been to Harper Brainerd, you know there's a levee up on the eastern side. He wound up turned over on the base of the levee. So that was the only thing that saved me, because I didn't do anything wrong, but getting that ATIS, and when you put it on the ATIS, with your maybe 300 at 15 dust to 2829. You know, I don't know what else you can do. So,
Okay, I got a quick, very specific question.
okay,
So I live up on the hill, Rainham Hill, where the condos are on top of the hill.
okay,
I'm also a pilot, I flew for many years.
okay.
I've been inactive for a few years. But during the summer, and I maybe assume it's other times during the year too, there are certain pilots who do simulated engine failure approaches.
Yeah,
They fly right over my house
okay,
at 200 feet or so. I mean, I'm very good at estimating altitude.
okay,
First of all, I thought that was against the rules. It would be 500 feet above a house with somebody in it.
okay.
Now, they're doing simulated engine failures. I know because they do it in a loop.
And where you say your house was?
Rainham Hill, the condos that are on top of the hill, the approach end
Okay,
approach end of 20.
okay, gotcha.
So, what responsibility do you have in that? I'm not blaming anyone.
No, not at all.
What's the story? Can't you tell them to make it a wider approach?
Make it wider, do it on the other side of the, of the runway. There's a few things that we can do in that instance. And, honestly, as an ATM, I don't know all things. If they're allowing that to happen, that's something I'm gonna have to talk to them about. And maybe, like I said, maybe move to the other side, the other downwind, where they can do it, on the eastern side of the field. Yeah, so, but that's, something I will take up with my people and let them know.
Yeah, simulated engine failures over house.
Okay, thank you. Right.
Hi, I'm just, thanks for your presentation. I'm just curious how many airports embedded in a residential neighborhood have uncontrolled airspace for that many hours every evening?
That's a question beyond me. Could you repeat it?
How many airports in this country embedded in residential neighborhoods have that many hours of uncontrolled airspace every day?
Every day? I'm gonna say a lot of them.
There's a lot.
Cause almost every contract tower has uncontrolled airspace at night. Harper Brady, we was open till midnight, so it was 6 hours. Danbury, when I first came back, it was pretty much the same as here. So when you're talking about 10 o'clock to 6 or 7 the next morning,
8 hours.
8, 9 hours. So it's pretty much almost every contract tower, because not all
Are
contract
all
towers.
those airports ringed by houses?
Pretty much in residential areas. Danbury's in a residential area. Even though there's a mall right there, but there's houses.
Yeah, but they don't have the traffic we have.
Oh, absolutely do. Absolutely
How
do.
many feet
I work
are
there, I
those
know.
houses from the airport?
Say again?
How many feet are those houses from the airport?
I'm not taking measurements, ma'am, but
Well, we are.
well, I can tell you this. Danbury was just way more traffic than here. I know that.
That's not the question.
Okay, what's the question?
Well, my question was about, so you're saying, yes, there's lots of airports that are embedded in residential neighborhoods, and so you're basically saying it's totally fine.
I'm not
We've
saying it's
actually-
fine. What I'm telling you is there's a lot of contract towers that are next to residential areas. That's what I'm telling you. Go ahead.
They're kind of like under control anyway. Most of your flights after 10 o'clock are IFR, and they're under the control of the TRACON, and so they land on the ground and landing assured.
I would say
So there is some kind of
maybe
control.
half of them, or a lot of them come
Well,
in
I
here
think
for.
for this airport here, you get like, maybe you get like a medical flight in the middle of the night.
Still the same. They come. A lot of them come in VFR after hours.
Yeah, but they're under control with TRACON. If they're shooting an approach here, TRACON's under control. As you're watching them, they have to report to TRACON, landing sure.
Let me clarify. If they're shooting an approach, yes, they are. But if they're just VFR and out there willy-nilly, they're just coming back like any other time.
But I think the concern is the airliners, the larger airliners, which you had stated before, are
Yeah.
under IFR control.
Yes,
And
they
do
are.
have to shoot, even in clear weather.
They're doing
shoot
IFR
ILS
approaches.
approaches under the control of TRACON.
Go ahead.
Publication official for pilots, first of all, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Touch and go landings are prohibited. So essentially, there's no private pilot type training. As Trent brought up, VFR
procedures. What's your insinuation with the relationship between houses and a tower being operational or not? To get into what Trent was talking about and the gentleman in front of me, the simulated engine failures, we as pilots when training ask for a short approach. We're letting them know. He approves that or doesn't approve that. We're not doing simulated engine mounts because we're not doing training at 10 p.m. at night. There's a pretty explicit restriction. So what's the insinuation that a control tower in a relationship to homes has anything to do? Obviously, I'm a pilot. I'm an instructor. I'm a commercial pilot. I'm familiar with the different kinds of things he's talking about. What's your insinuation? He doesn't fly a plane. I do. He tells me what to do, and I do it. That's how we work. What do the houses have to do whether he's in the tower or not?
Because the traffic is uncontrolled, and we've already had a plane crash into a house in Charter Oak.
Okay, the tower was open when that happened. The control tower was open when, I think,
So,
four people lost
so
their
to
lives.
counter you then, we should just have no air traffic control because there's no safety issues, so we should just,
No,
should just
no,
have
that's not
no-
according to, in fact, I didn't say that. I asked you what the
well, I'm
insinuation
insinuating
was.
that
As
it's a
pilot.
safety issue in a residential neighborhood that we have, because we regularly have flights. I live on Nelson Street, right by the airport. We regularly have flights that come in after 10 p.m. Andrew can stand on his head and say that's not true, but it's true.
It is true.
It's true, so
I-
that's all of the time, it's regular.
Yes.
Yes.
And so, those flights, so I'm saying, I think it's an important function of government to have air traffic control.
It
I
abso-
think his job's really important.
It is absolutely.
So that's
Not
why
only
I'm
do I
saying for
agree-
all these flights that are coming in from 10 to 11 p.m. without anybody controlling that traffic, I
So
think
stop.
is
Hold on.
a hazard.
Forgive me. Stop. That's not true what you just said. They're on an instrument flight plan. As he referred to N90, New York approach, they're on an instrument flight plan in radar contact, in communications with New York approach. And what he said was a technical term, but to elaborate, we're getting our vectors from them, and we're being not cleared to land officially, but essentially they're keeping track of us. So to make your statement that there's no element of air traffic control, the tower not there is not correct.
Okay, thank you. That is, I appreciate what you're saying, that there are a lot of flights that come in after 10 o'clock. I think that makes sense to me. If I did not work where I work right now and have access to ask the kinds of questions that I have the opportunity to ask, I would have the same questions that you have and the same concerns. I do appreciate those questions. For the rest of the questions, let's keep the conversation directed this way so that we don't get into back and forth. This was a great,
Well, my
helpful
question was for
conversation.
him.
No, I know. This was a helpful conversation. I think it helped bring out some things, so I appreciate both of you.
Well, maybe you could stop landing flights between 10 and 11 p.m. regularly. That's-
Well, we can
that's
talk
A.
about that. That's a
A.
good question.
12:30 in the morning today.
Okay, so we're
That's
gonna-
an actually solvable issue, Andrew, it
And
is.
it was Alvello that came in at 4 o'clock because I was up.
Yeah, we're gonna move on. I will ask Trent to address why we can or cannot do what you suggested, and then Ms. Reiners was the person who worked so hard to put this together or to push us to put this together. So I'd like to get to some of her questions as well.
That question is above my pay grade. Basically, and I think everybody can hear me. I hope everybody can hear me. That question is really above my pay grade. I don't tell them when to land. I don't tell them when to take off. All I do is take care of them once they're airborne.
I understand that's not your.
And, you know, ma'am, I'm sorry, but, you know, a lot of the questions in here are not gonna be answered here. This is a forum to talk about a lot of issues, but a lot of, you know,
There can never be answers to that.
it won't be answered here, that's all I'm gonna say. Like, everybody knows how big government works, and, you know, I don't wanna go into that spiel. But there's a lot of things that, at this level,
Okay, so.
you go ahead.
A concern that neighbors have is when an airplane taxis to the runway, it's referred to as idling.
Yes.
They're concerned why it's idling so long. Can you tell us about edict times, expect departure clearance times?
Yes,
Can you
yes.
tell us why the airplane idles?
I got an aircraft taxi to the runway, and we have to get the release from New York approach. They could be there, if they're busy, that aircraft could be idling, holding short 15, 20 minutes if they're busy. They could be in the same spot, not going anywhere for about 15, 20 minutes, just holding in position. And unfortunately, somebody's gonna be the brunt end of that, which is obviously you guys. So to finish my answer, there's things above me that I can't answer here that it's a given, basically. That's what I was saying. It's a given when I did that.
To that point, you mentioned earlier that, the weather in different areas of the country will impact the entire system, which backs up traffic,
Yes,
becomes a
yes.
traffic jam. So therefore, they have to hold them on the ground until they get an opening.
And I alluded to that when I said that 3 months ago that they backed everything up. So guys were 7 or 8 of those. Normally we have what, 2 or 3?
Keep here, be quiet.
Sit closer.
No, you be quiet.
Okay.
Let's not.
All right, so,
Go ahead.
yeah, can we, I'd like to move on to Ms. Reiner's question.
This is
No,
my
I
home,
think the
man.
public has questions.
What, Ms. Reiners also has questions. She has put a lot of work into this, so I'd like to honor the fact that she has put this together, help us put this together.
I'm sorry, I didn't see her hand up.
It's been up, yeah.
No problem, yeah, mine's up.
Well,
No worries.
Gloria, I'll get to you next.
It's not a
We'll
worry.
make sure we get to you, ma'am.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
I have a whole lot of questions. I actually had thought that this session would be primarily not about the details that the public.
We can't hear you back here.
Stand up, there's
Shall I use that?
Absolutely, Ms. Owen.
I had thought that this session would be primarily about some of the public's questions and issues and less about the details that many of the pilots in the room know and are familiar with. A lot of the terms that you've used, I'd have to go back and research that glossary of terms. But I think that one of the issues that I was very anxious for airports and the authority to talk about was flight paths. That's what I kept hacking away at. Tell me why it's this way, tell me why it isn't that way. And one of the persons who had hoped to join me here but was unable to because he was out of town tonight had a few questions. I have several questions. I can leave them with you or we can answer them in turn. But this person asked specifically, what are the IFR traffic patterns for runway 2 and 20 both for arrivals and departures? What fix do they come in on? And where does Bradley airspace start? How many miles out? Is it what you referred to before? Is it 5 miles out, 2,500?
No, that's New Haven. Bradley is surface of 4,000.
4,000?
Bradley is about 20 miles north of here. There's no IFR, well, 20, 25,
We're only 50 miles between here and Bradley.
okay, I just drive it every day.
Well, how far is it from here?
So how much airspace? Where's their
About 30.
airspace?
Okay, about 10 to 20 miles to Bradley.
You say tomato, I say, I'm just kidding. There's no set pattern for IFR altitude. If an aircraft is doing an instrument approach, there's an altitude for that. Every instrument approach has fixes. Be it 10 miles, be it 5 miles, be it 15 miles, called initial approach fixes, intermediate fixes, and final approach fix. And they start off at a certain altitude and they descend all the way to the runway. But there's no pattern altitude for IFR. Now, if you're departing, most terminals have a departure procedure. Like everybody that leaves here departs at 2,000 feet, and they can go runway heading, they can go whatever approach gives them. But they will depart here leaving at 2,000 feet, climbing to whatever their final altitude will be.
Is there a noise abatement departure procedure for Tweed?
What's the question?
Is there a noise abatement departure procedure for Tweed?
Most,
If I look online, it seems to say that there is with regard to departures.
well, most of your,
from 20.
most of your departure procedures are gonna take that noise abatement into account. So if they climb up to 2,000,
No wonder
they're gonna
it's
take that
showing.
into account when they make the departure procedure. Just like instrument approaches. Instrument approaches take into account, the congested areas. They leave them at a certain altitude, try coming over a congested area. Most of those approaches and departure procedures take the congested areas into account. So they're chirped out, but they get guys who are smarter than, other than me, I ain't gonna say you, but me. And they're chirped out, altitude based, what the distance is, and they have to be at a certain altitude. At 3 miles, they have to be at a certain altitude, 2 miles, and so on. You understand what I'm saying?
No, so,
Let me, back up to, I think one of the underlying questions that I had, and that is, I'm a resident of Branford,
Okay.
and Branford is very heavily impacted, not nearly as much as those who live in Brigham Hill or others immediately surrounding the area, but what I've observed over the many months is that when approaches come into runway 20, landings into runway 20, they all head over Branford before heading down onto the landing track of runway 20. I've not seen a single one, excuse me, I saw one last week that came in from the west, and comparably, those are arrivals. Departures all head to the east, if taking off from runway 2. Last week, I will admit that I saw several that took off from runway 2 northbound, headed towards Torrington, and then westward, and then southward. That was the rare occurrence. And my underlying question is, why are all of the flights, or overwhelmingly, headed in from the east onto runway 20 when landing, and when departing runway 2, if they are departing runway 2 into the wind, why are they similarly heading eastbound before they head south? Why is that? Why is that the predominance? Why can't they come in to the west if arriving over the Atlantic and Long Island Sound? Why can't they approach runway 20 from the west? Is there any practice that prohibits that? Why isn't it the case? And why similarly, when aircraft are arriving onto runway 20, why do they all approach from the east and not from the west?
Well, I think, I don't know if I'm getting to what you're talking about, but, we make the runway the one most nearly aligned with the wind. So if we're on 2,
Understood.
yeah, so
Understood.
it's not a thing that they're coming in from this direction or this direction. Whichever direction they come in from, we're probably gonna give them the same thing. You know, their VFR, we're probably gonna give them, say 2, if they're coming in from these, we're gonna go.
It isn't a question about 2 or 20, it's a
Okay.
question about how they approach 2 or 20. How they approach 20 upon arrival, how they depart from 2 upon departure.
Now you're talking about VFR, IFR, small guys or
I'm talking about a Velo.
okay. Most times they're gonna come in visual. If the weather's good, they're gonna come in visual.
What does that mean in terms of
Okay.
this question? Does that mean that it's pilot's choice? It's your
Kind
choice?
of.
Where does that responsibility lie, and how can you direct it? Can you
Technically, I
direct it?
can't. Technically, I can't. He's on an IFR flight plan, but he has the runway in sight. So I hear you. I see you.
Trent, can I try to get up there?
Yeah.
Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are established patterns that the aircraft typically flies. And there's the downwind, there's the base and final. They're established and they're directed that way so that everybody knows where everybody's supposed to be. That's the standard. There are times too when other airports' traffic impacts what they're doing. so they may be given a different route or whatever. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, but, so they may enter a downwind, and downwind, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is right over Branford for that approach. So that's, and again, just going back to the CTAF, when there's nobody in the control tower, they're announcing every aspect of their pattern. When they're entering a downwind, when they're entering a base, when they're on final, short final.
So to add to what you're saying and build on, Trent, can you talk to us in general terms about Rice intersection, key beads? Those are obviously south and east locations. Those are your arrival gates, where New York approach is vectoring the aircraft to that location. They're only set patterns to any given airport. They're a function of, as Tom mentioned, there are other airports, there's other airspace. That's why they're coming in from that direction.
Yes.
They're coming up the airway from Florida through a specific gate. There's only one gate, and we use the term gate differently than a boarding gate. It's an entry point. That's how the airspace structure works. We go through that, then the instrument approach or the visual approach, as Trent mentioned, when we're a visual approach, that means we see the runway and we're following an established pattern to the runway. The downwind is absolutely 100% over Branford. Yes, you're not misperceiving. That's how we maneuver to the runway 20. That's called the left downwind. We're visual, I'm looking at the airport, I see it, and I'm maneuvering accordingly. Further, when an instrument approach is needed for even runway 20, New York approach will vector the airplanes over Branford in order to orient themselves from the north. They're working with the airspace structure, we're maneuvering the airplane accordingly, and that means Branford is in the flight path. Now they can do a west side, or what would be called a right downwind, but there are two other airports that you may or may not know. Bridgeport, Sikorsky, the heliport has a control tower, Waterbury, Oxford. This isn't anything necessarily unique, it's just unique to our area. But they're coming from that general direction anyway, as in the east and southeast, so that's why they're funneling them through there. The whole point to remember is, at an airport, no matter the airport, airplanes don't come from just any particular zany direction. They have to be ordered. That's Trent's job. That's what Trent and his colleagues do. They order airplanes through these gates, these windows, and it happens to be where you live.
And you heard him say the National Airspace System, NAS, they're the highways in the sky. There are designated highways, essentially, in the sky that they follow. As Tony said, they get to a fixer point, and that's a gate, and then they start taking certain,
Where is that gate?
the one he just
It's
mentioned.
south of Long Island. It's called RICED, R-I-C-E-D. It's just a point invisible in the air. It's on a chart. Pilots see it, air traffic controllers. It's the gate that we use to order traffic to a particular area.
Is it not feasible? I've seen one landing, one arrival, in fact, from Atlanta to HVN that came in from the west. It didn't come in over Long Island Sound, it came in over close to Torrington. And I wonder if that happened, why is that happening? Why can't that happen more often?
It happened, again, if I may take liberty, this is what I do every day.
You have
for
fun.
at least 3 or 4 days. I work with Trent, this is what I do. And I ask these questions of air traffic controllers. I actually ask them, can we get the inland route today or the overwater route, depending on certain conditions? So it depends on where you're coming from, and even though it's oriented in the same location as Florida, they have a different route because guess what? One thing they want to do is go around New York airspace altogether. I can tell you the airway that they use for that, and Florida flights will sometimes get that route. But that's a daily basis where it changes. Trent can tell you about the traffic management unit in DC. They set the tone for the entire country, and they're actually in charge of what the exact question you're asking. Why can't they do an inland route where it would come to this area from the west? That's where the source is, because they're setting the stage for everything, and that literally changes on a daily basis. It can be weather, it can be the volume of traffic on the route, so that's why it changes.
But it doesn't change. It has consistently been from one direction,
Yeah.
and only once have I observed it coming in on a different
Right, they
direction.
do, because they like established patterns, and they use them as much as they can, because it's a known quantity. But they do alter, and then of course, where they're coming from factors as well.
I think this is something we could look at, that is there a possibility to, you know, kind of balance it out a little bit? However, we can't change the, you know,
The way
there's
they
certain defined areas, but to your point, we can certainly check with FAA and say, hey, is there a way to balance this out? And, you know, instead of having 90% going over this one, split it up a little bit.
My hope is that the airport authority, that Avports and Avelo would cooperate to disperse flights such that they were equally west incoming and east incoming, and then dispersed. This is a little bit like the next gen, you know, funneling on one certain narrow track. I think dispersion has always been an FAA goal when the community does get involved, and that's
So you're
really the principle.
You're preempting something I was gonna talk about later, but
Hopefully that's not an issue for him,
no,
but.
we are, and as Trent said, there's a few things that are above his head because FAA
Sure.
controls the entire airspace. We're investigating now, the possibility of creating what's known as a roundtable, community roundtable. And that's the way FAA recognizes these type of noise events and impacts and things. And they will take recommendations and things like that from the community roundtable, run it through the different lines of business and see, is it feasible? And there's a number of, like 4 or 5 items they check to see if it's feasible. And then if it's possible, and then what the action item is to do. So those type of recommendations, what we could bring to their attention.
I would hope that that this type of dialogue could continue beyond tonight,
Well,
so that the community can
that's
participate.
one of a couple. Avello mentioned at the past meeting, and Elma's departure. That's the other thing we're gonna run up the flagpole as well.
Is there a certain level, it sounded like,
What about this question over here?
yeah, I just want to wrap it up in this little piece. I got you.
10 minutes.
Well, that's all right, we'll get there, we got time. But I just wanted to ask one follow-up question, is it sounded like there's sometimes opportunities for a pilot to choose different, routes in? Did I understand that right?
Yes, but there's always a caveat. First
Yeah,
of all, our
yeah.
flight is planned by a dispatcher. Fuel being one of those concerns. And in the time of the environment, we obviously want to minimize fuel burn.
Right.
We have to fly somewhere. So as a pilot going into work, I do not initiate unless there's reason with dispatch to change my route. It's literally in a computer. It's called a canned flight plan. If I see something in the way, then absolutely, that's my job to call them up, dispatch, and say, I would like you to plan a different route, and we work on the new route. Then it still has to be fed to air traffic control, who then has to approve it or not.
So my question,
But
I guess
yes.
what I'm trying to get at, is there an opportunity to educate dispatchers and pilots who are regularly working with our airspace to think more creatively or, you know, more proactively?
No.
Some of that is local, but limited.
No.
Go to a national basis and they have to make that
I'll
decision.
be very pointed. We cannot say for the interests of whomever, we'd like to come in on this route today because we come in too much from the east.
Sure.
No, absolutely not.
Saves money.
It's nothing of the sort. We're gonna make somebody unhappy, aren't we, by flying over their house, no matter where we are.
Right.
Therefore, we accept what's given. As a flight crew, you assess the route for reasons of safety, weather, things of that nature. You do not ask dispatch to route you around the neighborhood. That's just not feasible.
Got it.
It would be,
Oh, that was very helpful, I just kind of wondering about.
because
other
again,
opportunities.
even when we ask for a route based on weather, we don't always get it approved by ATC.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people have to sport.
Okay, so we're getting there. But this is a very good conversation that opens up.
Fine, so
free
she asked her question.
Thank you. Hey, we're gonna get there. I appreciate your energy there. Go ahead.
So my question is about helicopters.
Yeah.
They like buzz my house on the other side of Victor Street coming into Robinson all the time. Couldn't they approach over Proto Drive in the industrial zone and then do all their low flying over the airfield where they should be doing their low flying? They shouldn't be 50 feet above my house.
Are they descending into the airfield?
Yeah, because I'm right on the edge. I'm right there by Robinson. But can't they go around? I mean, that should be in your purview.
I'm trying to answer
But
it
it doesn't
in
seem
a
like
nice way.
helicopters have any rules. They just go around.
Aircraft are gonna come in, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, it comes down to money, if you think about it. Like you're talking about, Tony, you're talking about, the way they're coming from the southeast or whatever like that, and you're talking about they can't coming from the west. Which one saves money? Southeast. They're gonna come in from the southeast. I know we don't wanna hear it, but that's just a fact. The one that saves money, if they come in from the south, they come in from the southeast and they get on the ground. And they meet a time limit, they save money by saving gas. It's just a fact. I ain't saying I like it.
Just around the
That's true.
pit is not gonna put them out. It's helicopters.
But if they're coming from, say, Bridgeport, they're gonna come direct to the field and try to get on the ground as soon as possible.
They shouldn't be buzzing neighborhoods, you know. They can do all that low flying over the airfield where it's much safer for them to be doing so.
I don't know what the answer to give you.
I'll take that and I'll try to look into it. I understand your concern. At a previous airport I worked at, we had a very similar situation, and we worked with the Helicopter Association because, again,
Well,
it
especially
ma-
now that you're gonna be doing these electric vehicles, right?
Well,
Because
if
you're gonna
you-
be doing these air taxis, I don't want those buzzing over my house.
trust me, you want them when the helicopter.
I know, well, I still, I don't want
and
anybody
no
flying
issues.
low over
But
my house.
I will look into that because, if it's just a short little thing, yes, it's money, but, let's quantify that and see what we can.
Thank you.
And, well, I'm not,
Okay, go ahead.
because I just wanted to add to the other two
Yeah.
things. The direction, I'm sure that's just all political, isn't it? Because, personally, I believe it's New Haven's airport, and New Haven citizens who have the vote are the ones who should be being flown over and disturbed, so that they can vote one way or another, whether they want the airport or not. We don't have any say. And then as far as coming in between 10 and 11, when those planes abort, they are not aborting over the runway, they are aborting off to the side and often again, right over my house. And that is dangerous.
How many have aborted over your house?
Probably at least 20 or 30 by now,
In how many years?
in the last few years, whatever, since they've been flying. But it's terrifying every time, and it's
No, I'm just asking
it's always in the
because
middle of the night.
Yeah. Thank you. Gloria.
I have a few things. First, I learned today that, while the tower is unmanned, it's being monitored by New York and on the radar, and I appreciate you on that. However, wasn't Tweed at one time, didn't they have people in the tower 24/7? Like, I'm going way back. Anybody? Okay,
Nobody here
since it's a 24-hour airport,
That's when it was FAA probably.
can't they get people in the tower? Like, what, you need tower control people to work, you need money, you got Goldman Sachs running this thing, that's airplanes out of the sky overnight.
That was when it was
Should be able to
FAA and
get-
there was more money, and I keep coming back to money, but that's when the government had more money, and I think New Haven was a FAA tower at that point, if I'm not mistaken. So,
So the answer
I'll
is
tell you
no.
what I'm working with now, I'll tell you, me and 3 other patrols work here. We're supposed to be getting other people in, but, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Well, is there anything we can do to get the tower manned, 24 hours a day? Since the flights come in, so long, or at least until the last delayed flight comes in at 2
I will advocate for that, that's what I want. It doesn't mean that I feel that the situation is dangerous without, but as you know, that will be what I talk about, whatever, with no power whatsoever, but as the liaison representing our pilots, I will ask for that, I want that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I think it's
Something
a-
fun out there, I'm sorry.
Oh, he said we'll take more
More money.
to run the tower.
Also, I'd like to clarify that New Haven, not all of us voted for this airport expansion or this 43-year lease. So I take offense personally when they're dividing the towns together, like Brantford is the airplanes, nobody wants to fly over their house. But,
Understood.
you know, I don't wanna fly over my house, I have them fly in front of my house, I have them fly in the back of my house twice a week, but I don't want you to change the flight path, sorry. I mean, all you're doing is misplacing the same, and yeah, we're supposed to be like, this is supposed to be a community, including Tweed, including airports, including everybody. Just like, come on.
So, I mean, just to tag onto that question a second ago about full service for the tower, it is a very difficult thing to get done, and there is a national shortage of people working on towers.
There you go, that's what I was about to say.
But, I mean, if we were, like, Tom, I don't know what the answer is, how do you petition for something like that?
Well, I know Mark
The
was bringing it.
strongest, probably one of the strongest lobbying groups in Washington is what Tony, I think, was talking about.
And also, Trent, can you talk to us about the qualification traffic count? Does New Haven even have enough traffic to warrant a control tower?
As I said before, Danbury and Harper Brainerd would get way more traffic.
But Trent,
And that was a loaded question.
Yeah, but, and that's a
Define
simple
traffic.
answer.
Yeah.
We have the carrier traffic here. That's why New Haven's open for the most part, the carrier traffic.
What is
Virginia-
your commercial area?
That's what I'm talking about.
Brainerd is your commercial area, not.
Well, we're talking about Bradley, yeah, but Harper Brainerd is a practice GA, yeah. I think they get business jets over there a couple of times a day, but nowhere near here, like the business jets and the carriers here. There is an air traffic control shortage that's nationwide. My company, it trickles down, I'll just say it like that, it trickles down. We had somebody here last month and the day they were supposed to get certified, they walked out. So, we're undermanned for the most part. You know, but if somehow they can get a couple of, I'll tell you what, they can probably get a couple more hours, but 24/7, I don't see that happening. Maybe midnight,
Didn't you guys have a class with East Haven, like recently, the high school reaching out to pilots or, trying to get something like that? Can't you guys include something like that in their curriculum?
Yeah, it's a good idea.
You know, I mean, you have some pilot, don't you have people shadowing you soon?
They did shadow, there was one that already shadowed, I think, I'm looking for somebody
So-
who was managing that.
Yeah, we had 2 East Haven high school students start a job shadowing program at the airport.
Yeah.
And so, it's a good thought to see how we can align the airport's workforce development efforts out in the community, not just on pilots and encouraging passion in aviation, but on FAA and air traffic controller
Yeah.
careers as well.
In the blue shirt back there, I see your hand is.
Thank you. I just had a question related to what you were talking about, the air patterns. I don't know a lot about this, so excuse my naivety. But I noticed that a lot of the airplanes they pass the airport, they go north, they loop around like just a quarter of Camden, and then they land that way. Someone had mentioned not wanting to, spend more money on gas, what is the cheapest alternative, all these things. So, and some days, lots of planes come straight in from the water and land at the airport. Other days, they go this roundabout way over and then they come down. So what is the reason for that? Why on some days do they go one way and some days go another way?
Simple answer, some days we're on 2, some days we're on 2-0.
It's because of the wind.
Because of the wind, we align the runway the most nearly with the wind, especially for the GA aircraft. for the, general aviation, I mean, my smaller aircraft. We're aligned with the wind. So if it's on runway 2, they come in from the water and come straight to the airport. If we're on 20, they'll enter downwind, left or right downwind, and circle the base leg to land.
Trent, can you explain that what she's asking relates to a visual approach versus not only the wind, but when we do an instrument approach?
Yes.
And why? So if we're doing, well,
Go ahead.
so it's related to whether we're doing a visual approach or an instrument approach. Those conditions are related to the ceiling of the height of the clouds and the visibility. If it's, for simple terms, foggy, we're not going to be able to do a visual approach. We're going to be vectored by air traffic control, radar, not Trent yet. By air traffic control, we're going to follow the general pattern that you're familiar with and you just described. And if we're using a south flow, runway 20, we're going to go out further because there's established points that we have to be on, and airspeeds and altitudes, and we have to track a glide path because we don't see anything. When it's visual, a day like today, for example, we're vectored by Trent's colleagues in New York approach. They hand us off to New Haven Tower on a visual approach, and we're following that approximate pattern, but because it's visual, and let me just be the first to say, I'm not saving anybody money. I have a responsibility to myself and all of you in the back of my plane or in the neighborhood. The last thing I'm thinking about is money. I'm maneuvering my airplane for safety, so I'm going to be, for lack of a better term, tighter or closer. That's the only difference. If you look at the two kinds of approaches, a visual approach or an instrument approach, we're following the same general pattern, but we're further out on an instrument approach because we need to be what's called stabilized. We need to be set and ready. So that's what the apparent difference is that you notice. So it's ceiling, as in the clouds, the visibility, and then the wind, and then as Trent pointed out, I have limits on a tailwind, on what I can land with. And in the interest of saving time, and also not flying over north of New Haven, if the winds meet a certain criteria, I can land on runway 2, but Trent has to have the room for me. If he has a full pattern, and I ask New Haven Tower, Motzi 217, like straight in runway 2, he's gonna tell me no, because everybody else is going in the other direction, and I have to be with the flow. So all those things considered, what Trent has in his pattern also affects what runway I get to use.
Yes, sir.
What determines the direction of departures and who makes those decisions?
The wind, pretty much the wind.
So, I take it you take off into the wind?
Yes.
And so 90% of the wind at Tweed comes from the west and the north? Pardon me? No.
From what I've seen here, it mostly comes from the southeast, what I've seen.
So most of your takeoffs are out over the sound. You take off in a southeasterly.
We're on 20 most of the time, yes.
It's not been my experience.
Well,
Living next
I'm
door
just
to
telling you,
you.
I've only been here 4 or 5 months, and I'm telling you,
I've been here for 20 years.
20.
What's your relationship? There's one way to take off or another way. There's only two directions. What is the implication? I'm the pilot in command.
Oh, implication for me is when you take off in a northerly direction, I get incredible amount of noise. When you take off in a southerly direction, I basically know it's like listening. It's like a Piper Cub taking off and a Bell aircraft taking off in a southward direction. From my perspective, I don't know about the folks that live out over there, but where I am,
I don't have that.
and 80% of the flights seems to me take off in a northerly direction. I may be wrong,
I
but
don't have the luxury to take off where I want to.
no, I'm not suggesting you do. I'm just asking questions.
So
I just want to know who decides what direction the planes take off.
To your point, and Elliot, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you happen to know roughly what the percentage is runway usage? Elliot collects a ton of data for us.
Yeah.
varies according to the season. In the summer, the wind is from the south, so the landings are from the north, and the takeoffs are over the south. In the winter, it's the other way around. In January, February, March, the takeoffs are to the north. Now, on any given day, at any given hour, it can go either way, but the wind is 100% of the time.
Okay.
All right,
How long is that?
Trent is ready to go. I really appreciate him staying around and answering a bunch of these questions, and there are a bunch outside of his scope, but he's done a good job of trying to answer them anyway, so I appreciate you, Trent, so thanks for coming
One
out.
more thing, if any of you have any questions, I talk to Andrew on the regular, so if any of you have any questions for later or whatever that you want me to look into, like one of the things I'm gonna look into is the wind direction and which runway we are on for the most part. Cause I'm pretty sure since I've been here, we've been on 20, so the wind's out of southeast south for the most part, since I've been here. It's rare that we go to runway 2. We do, but it's rare. Most of the time we've been on 20. So, but I'll look into that though.
Also, can you guys tell us what impact Breeze is gonna have on volume of carrier traffic out of it?
That's you. Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
I'll see you.
How many more carrier aircraft are gonna be landing and taking off in come January?
I don't have the percentage numbers, I know Tim does, but the only thing I will say is that Breeze flies a much quieter airplane. I believe it's in the neighborhood of, maybe another 30 to 40% of air carrier traffic possibly, because they're gonna be doing 10 cities. The Velo's at 26, so I'm just kind of going, and
Well,
it's.
that's 100%.
Pardon me?
That's 100%. If Breeze is doing 30, and
No, Breeze is
and Velo's
gonna do
doing
26,
26,
Velo's gonna do 10.
they're equal, that would mean 100% increase in traffic.
10 versus.
Oh, I thought you said 20, I thought you said 30.
No.
Can I take a little liberty? I'm not speaking for Breeze. I'm a pilot for Breeze. I'm going to be the one flying into the neighborhood. On the schedule that we have, 10 cities doesn't mean 10 flights a day, and it doesn't mean 10 airplanes. A Velo, this is a concept of aircraft utilization. The Velo has 6 airplanes assigned to New Haven, and they fly 27 destinations approximately. They obviously don't have flights to those cities every single day, so they ration out how the airplanes are assigned. In my estimation, and I'm not speaking for the company, I have no inside information, 1 to 2 aircraft would be assigned to New Haven with the schedule that I'm expecting. Now again, I'm not the one making the decisions, of course, but it's 1 to 2 airplanes. 1 airplane is expected to overnight. That's it. The way the schedule works, it's a different kind of schedule. It's not a mainline hub and spoke type of thing. So it's minimal, but the key to remember, it doesn't mean 10 airplanes, it doesn't mean 10 flights a day. You can get a lot done, and I'm keeping it generalized, with 1 to 2 airplanes. Bradley, for example, is a base for a Breeze, a very big one, as parallel to New Haven and Avella. We do it with 6 airplanes. We do our whole schedule. New Haven will be a fraction of that, and I'm not speaking to the future or what their plans are, but as I understand it, 1 to 2 airplanes will be the addition here.
That's how I estimated the 30 to 40, because it's 30 to 40%, 2 of the 6.
Gotcha, so 30% with quieter planes.
Right.
It's a stage 4.
It is a much, you'll see.
Okay.
That's good news.
My issue is that there was an agreement between the city and the airline that there would be no traffic after a certain period and before a certain period. Now, in the event that that holds true, then we don't have to be concerned about the tower being unmanned overnight, because there shouldn't be any planes arriving or taking off during that period of time unless it's an emergency or medical. There are regularly scheduled departures and arrivals during the course of the night. Why? What happened to the agreement?
They're not scheduled.
So there are no scheduled flights through the night. There are flights that come in late, which are, yeah, well, we go right, we do get bumped right up to 11 o'clock. But through the night, any flights that come in after those regular hours, those are all delayed flights. And it can, like even this weekend, I mean, I think somebody mentioned there was one that took off at 1 a.m. And that, I mean, we had a hurricane, the whole region is completely messed up. So, you know, that weather somewhere else can really impact what time people are even leaving here. And if we hold everybody here, which we can't by law, but like, if we could somehow do that, then the rest of the system collapses over the next 2 days. And then we have even more late flights
I'm
the
not
next
talking
couple of
about
days.
exceptions. I'm talking about regularity.
Well,
Also,
weather is regular, and it regularly delays flights, and that's what I think you're seeing.
okay, also, it was my understanding there was gonna be a community liaison.
Yes. Yeah. So
So
everybody
how do
welcome
we
Tom.
Yes.
How do we find out? Do you know why there was a plane running on the taxiway for a half hour or 20 minutes?
Yeah, so I recently joined, I'm probably about 3 months or so into the role, and I'm gonna briefly touch on some more information, and then at the end of the presentation I put my contact information, so you'll have my cell.
So were you sitting in the tower or someplace on the premises?
Oh yeah, I work in the airport, yeah.
Okay, so you can actually answer, why is that plane still sitting there? 3 planes have arrived, and that plane is still sitting there waiting to take off.
Well, I will say this though, so Tom will be able to get answers to people, but he is not going to sit on the runway.
I don't expect him to, that's ridiculous.
But he's also like, if somebody's emailing, you know, why is that plane sitting there? He's not gonna be able to get back to every email within, you know, the 10, 15, 30 minutes a day or even 2. There's a lot of work to catch up on and do. But if on regular issues, that is something that we can address. If there are, you know, and we've done this before, right? Where there was, they were running those starters over the weekends, and it was nonstop all day, and they didn't want to turn it off. And somebody called, and we got it. We talked to the airline and got that worked out. But if there's a plane that's kind of gone out, you've heard here that they don't have like a whole lot of control over, you know, when ATC puts them into the air. But that said, I mean, there are times when starters and APUs are running, sitting on the ramp for extended periods of time, and we'll try to answer those as we can.
You have planes that are sitting, actually waiting to take off, within, you know, yards of taking off.
Right.
And they're sitting there, and sitting there, and sitting there.
And so that's
We used to, wait a minute,
Yeah.
please. There used to be a time when you could call and speak to a human being, and they would say, let me find out. And you would get a call back saying, this is why it occurs. This is what's happening right now. And then, all right, I'm either satisfied or not satisfied with your answer.
Right.
And that's it. Why don't we have that
I
luxury
think
now?
that's what the goal is with Tom, and as Andrew said, he will get you as soon as possible, but sometimes it has to be investigated. I would only ask that when you do call, give as much specific information as possible. If it's happening right then, if it's a time, if it happened previously, what time, you know, from minute, you know, 10, 15 to whatever, give as much detail as possible so that Tom can investigate it, work with Trent's people, find out what the issue was and get back to you.
But I'll add to that though, is that if it's sitting out on the end of the runway and it's just sitting there, the answer is gonna be the same about every single time because they're waiting for ATC to give them the go. So it's gonna be the same answer.
It should be more efficient than that.
Well, I wish. Yeah.
Also, I lost track now. You could spend all day being on file a community complaint.
Sure.
It could be a full-time job.
It is.
Absolutely, and
I found
who
out very
has
quickly.
that kind of time? So how many times are the fumes affecting us, or the noise affecting us, any of that you don't get any information on it from me or anyone else in the neighborhood? Because we're not near a computer, we don't have the time, I can't stop because I'm driving or nearby and I have to put it in through my phone. It takes 5 minutes to file those complaints. There has to be a better, more efficient way for us to deal with any problems that we have with the airport a little more directly than them. I appreciate that he does respond to us. I do appreciate that, and I've had that, experience with him. But to sit down and actually, I have to stop whatever I'm doing and sit down and write a complaint. It's not a good, it's definitely not a practical
It's a
way
fair
to deal
point,
with this.
and actually, it is a great segue into the next presentation that we're going to give you all if you all would like to see it. I see one question over there, so I'll take that really quickly, but we'll come back and answer that question or that comment here in just a minute. I'll turn this on so that we can show you kind of what we're planning to do, because there are more efficient ways to track this stuff, and we're going to do that.
So going back to the flights during the night, obviously we all know there's like 4 or 5 flights scheduled between like 10:30 and 11 p.m. And any given night, you know at least 2 of them are going to be super late, and that is going to always have overnight flights. However, we've noticed like some just flights in the night, like going or coming from places that you don't typically have on your route, and it doesn't look like they were like shuttled over there and rerouted. So like say for instance, this weekend, Sunday morning, 4:02 a.m., a flight arriving from New York saying it was scheduled to depart at 3:44 a.m., actual departure 3:42 a.m., and scheduled, and then it landed at 4:02 a.m. Why was that flight coming from New York? It seems that it was scheduled and it was developed.
Yeah, Andrew, again, this is, not to interject, but this is what I do, and I don't communicate these things with Andrew or the Toms or the specific airport. These are what are called typically reposition flights. Flight could have been canceled, the aircraft is needed to begin the next segment, the next day in this case, whatever it might be. They're reposition flights. Very simple, the airline is moving the pieces of its puzzle to where it needs to be for the next day. That's not something that we will ask permission for. We don't. We file a flight plan and we do so. That's an unscheduled operation, an irregular operation. There's no rule against that. It's not a violation. And we do not need anyone's permission except that of air traffic control. And it's an airline decision where they choose to put their airplanes on a given day.
Except it interrupts, I understand what you're saying, and I understand you're a pilot, but it interrupts our sleep to be woken up every time you want to reposition the plane that's going to go to Bradley and fly your fellow flight, and we do it at 3:45 a.m. for that too, and then we reposition these flights. It's still the same amount of noise that we're getting from them zooming down and swooping down and making
Well, it's
the same
actually
noise.
more noise because the ambient noise is quieter.
But I mean,
But it is
so
only-
if we have an agreement that you're, like, I don't think people are thinking, oh, you're gonna fly in these other flights to get them ready for the next day during those hours of 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's why people don't understand why those of us that are complaining so much, because they don't understand that we're hearing flights all night long.
Can I interject?
I understand that there's an agreement not to schedule flights overnight.
Yeah, so
But
that.
there are no sanctions attached to, or penalties, or any other enforcement,
Right, yeah.
ability on the part of the community to,
It's a schedule.
abate those, and apparently, if these are unscheduled repositionings, do whatever you want.
So just, and I'll hear from you in just a second, but like, so the word scheduled is a tricky thing, and I've noticed this because there is the passenger scheduled flights, but then if you go onto like Flight Radar or whatever those are, those terms get very wonky on there, and it'll show at like a scheduled departure, but it's not a, what is it called, like a route departure that's pre-scheduled, that's thrown into a planning. Yeah, it's not a published route.
FlightAware is taking the actual, or nearly so, the filed flight plan time is not what a schedule is to the consumer.
Right.
It's when the flight plan was filed. FlightAware is also not an official record-keeping system, of course, but that's not the airline schedule. I do the flights and chuckle when it tells me I was on time when I know I was 20 minutes late. It means essentially almost nothing in that regard. It's not the airport and the airlines telling you two different things. You're looking at a technicality that isn't what you're thinking it is.
So essentially, there's no restriction on Avelo as to when they can bring flights in and out of the Tweed. They can basically do whatever they
The
want.
federal government has said that they can, that we cannot dictate those hours, and that they do not dictate hours to the airlines.
But to be clear, Andrew, you guys tell airlines.
So that the
not to
agreement
schedule.
is a fiction.
The agreement is not a fiction because there are no consumer flights regularly scheduled to happen after those hours, but because of weather and delays, or like repositioning. If it was over this weekend, it could have been a lot of companies will move their assets out of a hurricane path during that hurricane, and then when the weather's kind of calmed down, they move things around. So
Does that answer your question?
Can I ask that, please?
yeah, and then
So, I live right near the south end of the airport, and I am a pilot, and I follow FlightAware closely. I get disturbed by the planes just like everybody else does. The particular morning that you're referencing, there were actually a couple of departures during the night as well, I believe between 1 and 2 a.m. Those were corporate or business jets, however you'd like to classify them. The jet that came in was a reposition flight. I believe it came in from Atlantic City, but it was either somewhere around New York, New Jersey. Those types of flights are extremely rare. They're very rare. I have a scanner, I'm a pilot, and I'm telling you, yes, there's some delayed flights that come in when the weather's bad. It happens in spurts, but the reposition flights, Tony, you can vouch, they're extremely rare, and to have a flight at 4 o'clock in the morning, the last time that happened was probably months ago. And it's still, no, it was the other day. She's referencing one the other day. Prior to that, there hasn't been a reposition flight during the night in a very long time. So one reposition flight during the night at that time is bothersome. It bothers me. I heard it. But as everyone's saying, it's allowed. It doesn't happen that often, and that's just the way it is. We have to live with it. We live near an airport, and the airport's open 24 hours a day. Just like the jets that took off, people were complaining, insinuating that it was a Velo. They were not a Velo jets that took off at 1 in the morning, that very same morning. They were business jets, and they were allowed to do that. It's just the way it is. We live near an airport.
all right, thank you. I saw one hand over here, and then I'd like to give Tom an opportunity to present the EnviroSuite stuff. Did I see your hand up?
I've just noticed that Avella seems to be doing a lot more flights. They come directly over my house. I live on Fairhaven Heights. They fly very low, because they're
I'm
coming
sorry, over where?
Fairhaven Heights.
Very.
So they're coming in, I mean, I'm in my garden, it's very noisy, but the plane is not that high above me. But I've also noticed that they've been coming many more, very early in the morning, and the hurricane had nothing to do with it, because I'm talking weeks ago before.
Sure.
That seemed to be the weather thing, but it seems to be a regular thing that Avella has these flights that are before most people are hoping to be able to sleep until the time they wake up, which could be, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. So when you get wakened an hour and a half, 2 hours before that, it's disruptive. Some of us have to drive distances to go to work. We want to have our sleep. And the truth of the matter is I've lived here for 24 years, and this is new. This was not the problem when I moved in. And yes, I was aware of Tweed's presence and flights, and I know that things do change, but this has been a change that I think disturbs a lot of people.
Yeah.
I grew up living near Bradley Airport, so I'm not unaware of
Right.
planes and trains and the noise, but it's very different here.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Good signal.
Yeah, so we're gonna give you a preview of something that's coming later on, and Jeremy was gonna help us with this, but Jeremy's sick today, so Tom got
Have
tapped
me
in the last
instead.
second, which means he has all the information you could ever possibly want. But he's going to give us a little insight into kind of your collective point. I think what we are going to eventually roll out will give you all a little bit more power and opportunity to really clarify what's going on with the aircraft and with noise and a variety of things. So, Tom, which by the way, Tom Cavalier.
Introduce myself.
Yeah.
Well, first to start, very nice to meet you all. As I mentioned earlier, so I'm probably about 3 months into my new role. So I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the airport. And part of that role is an investment into more capacity to make sure that when you make a call, there is somebody on the other line, there is somebody looking into all of your questions, all of your concerns. And when it comes to also the VOC Community Concern Forum, I'm also the one on the other end responding to those. So just wanted to introduce myself. I'm a New Haven resident. My family's from New Haven originally. My grandfather was a business owner in East Haven as well, so this is a region and an area that I care very deeply about. And I'm very excited to be in this role and to just be able to engage with all of you. And so part of that is, again, making sure that not only I'm here to increase our capacity, but that we have the tools and the toolkits for all of you to have more information about local aviation activity. And so that's part of why we invested into a program called EnviroSuite. And EnviroSuite has a WebTrak feature, and what it's going to do, and I'm going to just show a few slides here, and it'll include a few photographs of what the user interface is going to look like. And part of this, again, is just to increase our transparency and open engagement with all of you, and to really be able to highlight local aviation activity. So it's going to include real-time, it's going to be a real-time map, and on that map is going to be, you'll see in the next slide here, it might be a bit small. It is small. But essentially it's a map, and on that map you'll be able to see all the local aircraft operations. Helicopters, airplanes, you can see where they're coming from, you can see where they're going. You can click on those aircraft as well, and it'll give you the model type. It'll give you information about the airplane. So for example, if there's an overnight aircraft operation, and you sort of automatically might assume it's a Novello delay or whatever it might be, you can click on it and see that it might be a general aviation aircraft or a medical transport plane, just to sort of put more information in your hands so that you can access the same information that we do. And this is the same interface that we have as well. So you'll have all the same information through this dashboard that we at the airport have as well. So it's going to be interactive, it's easy to use, real-time information. You can also have historical data, so you can use that same interface to go back in time and look at, say, there was an aircraft yesterday at noon, it did this. You could type that time frame into the system, and it'll show you exactly what happened at that time. Importantly as well, you can type in your address, and it'll show you exactly what happened around your address at that same time period that you put in. And it'll also include in what's going to be called the point of closest approach sort of module, essentially. And when you click on that aircraft, at a particular time, it'll tell you its elevation from ground. So you could say, if you say the plane was flying over my house, how high was it? You go into the system, you type in the time frame, you click on the airplane, it'll tell you exactly how high it was at that point in time. And then this is just to give you an idea, again, I know it's kind of small, but it is pretty easy to use. We're going to have more information about this program and about the WebTrak features at our next board meeting. And so there we'll just sort of go more in depth. We're going to have a representative from the company come and really give you a much more detailed insight into how to use it, how it can be valuable to you. But this is just sort of a kind of teaser and to really segue into that larger conversation. One more picture looks essentially as the same. But as I promised as well, here at the end is my contact information, which I encourage you to please write down. And as you have questions, as you have concerns, you can certainly text me, call me, and email me as well, and I'll get back to you. So, oh, am I in your way?
John?
Yes.
Is it essentially a flight radar 24 substitute for real-time and historic?
I guess you could call it a substitute. I mean, it is real-time, but it has additional features as part of the program, which allow you to click on and have just more detailed information, but including and especially elevation.
Would it show flight path beyond the 5 mile?
I think so. I don't know how far out the radius goes for the map, but it will be a set sort of parameter around the airport. And it'll be within that sort of map you'll be able to see flight activity. Sure.
We're also going to, did you talk about like integrating the noise monitors?
Oh, yes, another important feature. So there will be deploying noise monitors as part of this, we'll be deploying noise monitors as part of the program. And so those will be placed around the airport, and then you'll be able to see as well the activity on those noise monitors as it relates to the aircraft.
There had been discussion, I believe, at one of these previous community meetings about mobile monitors. Where do we stand? Where does the airport and HBN stand on that? Is that going to be tracked as well?
I believe, I don't want to say absolutely for sure, and these could be, you know, additional questions that you bring to the next board meeting.
Well, I
will
can
raise. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is a result of that conversation in the June meeting. We were in the middle of kind of revamping the previous sound website, the Noise Tweed or whatever the name of that website was, for the next phase of Part 150 funding for sound mitigation. And so what we've done is we're going to revamp that, but as a result of the June meeting, we started digging into pulling out, you know, getting noise monitors and making it visible and transparent for the community. And EnviroSuite became became the answer to that. So that's how we got to what we're doing here. Also part of the conversation of, you know, how high above the, you know, my house is this airplane. So this is a specific response to that. So those noise monitors will be mobile.
Sorry, did you say, so, I'm sorry, the EnviroSuite, I know you said how it's gonna be able to show like the altitude of the planes and all that, and where it was, and you can look up your house at a certain time. What did you say about the noise monitoring part? Is it gonna show noise on that?
There will be deployable noise monitors around the airport, and so where the noise monitors are, you'll be able to see the decibel level from their location. I'm sorry?
You'll be able to like click on, is it kind of similar to the air quality app, or where you like click on the one where it
Right.
Yes.
see the measurement at real time, or?
That's it. I'm not sure.
Idea, or?
Yeah, it'll be very.
WebTrak?
It'll be.
So we could go to WebTrak and find out where the monitors are?
Yeah, so, yeah, well, just to quickly on that point, yes, so the idea is, again, you know, I mean, this is all just part of the process of just making sure everybody has as much information as possible in real time, and those sort of noise monitors will have an interface where you'll be able to see what the noise levels are. You know, exactly what that interface will look like, they'll go through at the next board meeting. And then one of the things I've done too, and I'll make sure to leave it, I have over here, you know, take your name and email address. So as we, you know, sort of move forward, putting together a community newsletter. So not only are you going to have to attend a board meeting to find out this information, but we'll make sure to reach out to you directly through that. And sorry, to your question, sir? You had a question over here?
Like where to find information?
Well, oh yeah, so this will all be integrated into our website.
The WebTrak?
Yeah, so the WebTrak is a feature in a program called EnviroSuite. And so EnviroSuite is a partner of ours and an investment we have made into this program.
Where will I go to find this information?
Yeah, so we'll...
So I go www.flytweed.com?
Flytweed.
Yeah.
Flytweed.com. We'll integrate it there. Flytweed.
Yeah, so it'll all sort of integrate into our existing website, and then as we move forward and in the next board meeting, we'll more clearly outline how that kind of user map looks like.
So the other, and Gloria, I'll get to you in a second, but a couple of things about this is that we'll roll out more information at the next board meeting, but we're also going to do another community meeting to roll out once we get really close to the end and we have a lot of feedback, so that we can, almost like a training session for the community. So that'll be coming. Another thing to know too is we're hoping to be able to do like some beta testing and allow members of the community to sign up for a lottery to do beta testing on the website before it's public, so that you can help us, if things don't make sense, or if it's not working, you're clicking on a button, the plane isn't loading, it looks like the plane is sitting on the ground, whatever. So we'll have a lottery system for a certain number of community members to be able to help us beta test that website before it goes live for everybody else. If you're interested in that, sign up here as well. We'll send people an email when we go to do that.
When are you planning for it to go live?
Late November.
So just a few weeks?
Yes, sir.
Great.
Gloria.
The newsletter, is that gonna be like a monthly thing, or?
So right now, we're gonna do thinking quarterly, but I think part of that is a conversation about what regularity of information would be most helpful. And part of that will just cover some of the activity that us in the airport have been up to in the community, which is quite a lot, just so everybody's aware, and also at the same time, of course, making sure that we have just another avenue and vehicle to promote and let everybody know about events like tonight's, but also all the community benefits and investments we're making into programs like EnviroSuite. So I think maybe we'll still under, sort of under consideration, but it's really going to ultimately be what's the most impactful, a cadence of information. Sure.
All right. I can't believe I would say this, but we have 24 minutes left. So if you really want, or we go home and get a drink.
I think the debate started.
Well, thanks everybody for being so kind to me on my debutante show.
Debutante ball.
Yeah.
All right. Any other last questions? We good? Good? All right.
Yeah,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
And don't forget to sign up here.